There is a silent crime being committed at this very moment. Not with weapons or prisons, but with school desks, uniforms, and framed certificates on the wall. A crime Nietzsche identified more than a century ago, and which today has reached industrial proportions. The question that should keep you awake at night is not, what did school teach me? But what did school turn me into? And the answer, my friend, may be more unsettling than you think. For Nietzsche, the modern school does not exist to free the human spirit. It exists to domesticate it, to turn lions into sheep, to transform free thinkers into obedient gears. You feel it, don't you? That sense that something essential was stolen from you during those years of formation. That wild creativity you had at 5 years old. That insatiable curiosity. That courage to ask uncomfortable questions. Where is all that now? In the next few minutes, we will embark on a dangerous journey. We will not simply criticize the educational system. We will dismantle it completely, using Nietzsche's philosophical hammer. We will uncover the 5 main mechanisms through which school programs you for mediocrity. And more importantly, we will offer the antidote, the path back to your original nature, to your ability to think autonomously. Prepare yourself. What you are about to discover may forever change the way you see your own education. And perhaps, at last, you will begin to unlearn what you were never meant to learn. The first law of school programming is the law of uniformity. Nietzsche observed that the educational system operates like a factory. Diverse raw material enters, identical products come out. Unique children go in. Standardized adults come out. Why does this work so efficiently? Because uniformity exploits our most primitive tribal instinct, the fear of exclusion. Since the dawn of humanity, being different from the group meant certain death on the African savannas. Modern schooling hijacks this ancestral fear. Through a single curriculum, rigid schedules, standardized tests, and constant pressure to fit in, it creates what Nietzsche called the man of a herd, a being who thinks like others, acts like others, and most importantly, fears standing out. Nietzsche wrote in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, 1,000 goals there have been so far, for 1,000 peoples there have been. Only the yoke is still lacking for 1,000 necks. One goal is missing. School is that yoke. Let me take you to 19th century Prussia. Otto von Bismarck, the Iron Chancellor, did not conquer Europe with armies alone. He conquered it with classrooms. Bismarck understood something fundamental. Obedient soldiers and productive workers are not born. They are manufactured. And so he created the first system of compulsory mass education in the Western world. Children from every background were gathered together, separated by age, not by ability or interest, seated in rows, like soldiers in formation, taught to respect authority without question, to follow bells that dictated when to think, when to eat, when to exist. The result? An entire generation capable of executing orders flawlessly, but incapable of questioning whether those orders made sense. And that Prussian model did not die with Bismarck. It spread across the world. It is alive in the classroom where you spent your childhood, even now. Today, uniformity has taken on far more sophisticated forms. The national curriculum forces every student to learn the same things at the same pace, in the same way, regardless of their unique talents. A child who thinks in images is forced to memorize abstract formulas. A mathematical genius is made to memorize irrelevant historical dates. A born artist spends years calculating logarithms they will never use. And on social media, the uniformity continues. Algorithms show us the same opinions, the same products, the same idealized lives. We are trained to want what everyone wants, to think what everyone thinks, to be who everyone is. The second law is perhaps the most insidious, the law of passive obedience. School does not teach you to think. It teaches you to obey. And there is an abyss between those two things. Nietzsche identified what he called the death of the will to power in modern man. The will to power is not, as many misunderstand, a desire to dominate others. It is the vital impulse to surpass oneself, to create, to transform, to become. The school system kills that will through a simple yet brutal mechanism: submission to arbitrary authority. From the very first day, the child learns that there is only one right answer, and that answer lies in the teacher's answer key. Questions are discouraged. Doubt is punished. Curiosity that strays from the curriculum is treated as disobedience. And so, year after year, the child internalizes the fundamental message: do not think, obey. In 1961, psychologist Stanley Milgram conducted one of the most disturbing experiments in history. He wanted to understand how ordinary German citizens had participated in the Holocaust. In the experiment, ordinary people were instructed by a figure of authority, a man in a white lab coat, to administer increasingly painful electric shocks to another person. The shocks were fake, but the participants didn't know that. The question was, how far would they go? 65% of participants delivered the maximum, supposedly lethal shock, simply because an authority figure told them to, even as they heard screams of pain, even when they knew it was wrong. Milgram reached a terrifying conclusion. Western education does not create critical thinkers. It creates qualified, obedient workers. And that obedience, when placed in the wrong hands, can justify any horror. Look at your own professional life. How many times have you performed a pointless task simply because your boss told you to? How many brilliant ideas have you swallowed out of fear of challenging a superior? In modern corporations, passive obedience is rewarded with promotions. Conformity is rebranded as team spirit. And questioning? That's labeled as a lack of cultural fit. You were trained for 2 decades to raise your hand before speaking, to ask permission to use the restroom, to accept that others decide when you may eat, rest, or think. And now you wonder why it feels so hard to be an entrepreneur, why it feels so hard to stand up for your own ideas. The third law exposes the intellectual fraud at the heart of the system: the law of dead memorization. School mistakes the accumulation of information for the acquisition of wisdom, and that confusion produces hollow scholars. Nietzsche made a crucial distinction between historical knowledge and vital knowledge. Historical knowledge is the accumulation of facts about the past. Vital knowledge is the extraction of tools from the past to transform the present. School operates almost entirely in the former mode. You memorize battle dates, but never learn strategy. You memorize chemical formulas, but never develop scientific thought. You recite poems, but never understand why poetry matters. And here lies the hidden poison. This kind of memorization creates the illusion of knowledge. You feel educated because you remember facts. But Nietzsche warned, the man who knows much is like a walking library. He carries the weight of books, but not their wisdom. In ancient Athens, Socrates confronted the sophists, professional teachers who sold memorized knowledge to the wealthy. They taught rhetoric without truth, memorization without understanding. One day, a rich young man came to Socrates, proud of having memorized all of Homer's texts. He could recite the entire Iliad from memory. Socrates asked, "Do you know why Achilles chose brief glory over a long life?" The young man hesitated. "Do you understand what Homer was trying to teach about the nature of heroism?" "Then you do not know Homer," Socrates concluded. "You merely carry his words as a donkey carries sacks of grain." Socrates was sentenced to death for asking such questions, for exposing that Athenian education produced eloquent parrots, not wise thinkers. And 25 centuries later, we are still killing Socrates, one classroom at a time. Today, dead memorization has reached absurd levels. Students spend years memorizing information that is one click away on Google. They are tested on their ability to regurgitate facts, not synthesize ideas. And the result? University degrees that do not guarantee critical thinking. People with MBAs who cannot solve real problems. Doctors who know everything about their narrow specialty, but nothing about how to live. Nietzsche foresaw this age. We have become walking encyclopedias of dead information, incapable of producing a single original thought. Up to this moment, we have unveiled the three fundamental pillars of school programming. You have seen how uniformity kills your singularity, turning lions into identical sheep. You have witnessed how passive obedience assassinates your will, producing efficient automatons without a soul. And you have discovered how dead memorization fills your mind with useless information, creating the illusion of knowledge while killing wisdom. These are the foundations, the bedrock of the mental prison. But there is a deeper level, darker. Mechanisms so subtle that most people never notice they're being controlled by them. The next two principles we will explore are the most dangerous. They concern how school does not only control what you think, but how you think. Not merely what you want, but who you believe yourself to be. Nietzsche reserved his most devastating criticisms for these mechanisms. Because once you see them, there is no unseeing. And once you understand them, escape becomes not only possible, but inevitable. Let us descend into the depths. The fourth law is the most philosophical, and perhaps the most important, the law of the herd morality. School does not merely teach facts. It implants an entire moral framework into your psyche. And that morality was designed for a single purpose, to keep you mediocre. Nietzsche spent years studying the origin of moral values. His conclusion was explosive. Most of the values we call good did not arise from wisdom or virtue, but from the resentment of the weak toward the strong. In school, this morality of resentment is taught as an absolute virtue. Be humble, they say. Translation, don't stand out. Work as a team, they say. Translation, dilute your excellence so others won't feel inferior. Be modest, they say. Translation, hide your achievements. Nietzsche called this the slave morality, a moral system that glorifies submission, humility, obedience, self-sacrifice, and demonizes strength, ambition, confidence, willpower. And school is the cathedral of that morality. You are taught that to be good is to be conformist, and to be bad is to be different, questioning, exceptional. In Greek mythology, there is the story of Prometheus, the titan who stole fire from the gods and gave it to humanity. Zeus, the king of the gods, was enraged, not because the fire was stolen, but because humans now had power. They could create, build, rise. Zeus's punishment was cruel. Prometheus was chained to a rock where an eagle devoured his liver every day. The liver regenerated at night, and the torture began again, eternally. But here is the lesson Nietzsche drew. Zeus did not punish Prometheus for doing wrong. He punished him for elevating humanity, for giving humans the tool of self-overcoming. And that is precisely how the school system behaves. When you try to rise above the herd, the system acts like Zeus. Teachers label you as arrogant. Classmates isolate you for thinking you're better than others. The herd always punishes the one who tries to escape. Look at the modern corporate world. What happens to the brilliant employee who exposes inefficiencies? Is he promoted? Rarely. More often, he is sidelined. On social media, this same dynamic is amplified. Someone achieves extraordinary success, and immediately, hordes appear to humiliate them, to bring them back down to earth, to remind them of their humble origins. It is herd morality in digital form. The masses cannot tolerate exceptional individuals because they expose their own mediocrity. Nietzsche warned, in the herd, individuality is zero, and morality is nothing more than herd discipline applied to individuals. You were trained to feel guilt for your ambitions, to see your will to power as selfish or problematic. That is no accident. It is social engineering, how to free yourself from herd morality. First, practice what Nietzsche called the transvaluation of values. Radically question every moral belief you have inherited. Ask yourself, does this value strengthen me or weaken me? Liberate me or imprison me? If the answer is the latter, discard it without guilt. Second, cultivate what Nietzsche called amor fati, the love of fate. Embrace your exceptional nature fully, including your desire for greatness. Do not apologize for wanting to be extraordinary. That is not arrogance. It is existential honesty. Third, accept that you will be hated. The herd always attacks those who try to fly. Nietzsche wrote, "There is no favorable wind for the one who does not know where he is going." But he also said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow." Your mission is not to be loved by the herd. It is to transcend it. We have reached the end of our journey. And if you have paid attention, you now see what Nietzsche saw. School does not fail to educate you. It succeeds perfectly at what it was designed to do, to create beings who are uniform, obedient, filled with dead information, imprisoned by herd morality, and incapable of living in the present. Uniformity kills your uniqueness. Passive obedience kills your will. Dead memorization kills your wisdom. Herd morality kills your greatness. And temporal conditioning kills your ability to live. Together, these 5 mechanisms form a complete prison, a prison so perfectly built that most prisoners defend it. They call their cell education, and they believe their chains exist for their own good. But now you know the architecture of the prison, and knowledge is responsibility. Nietzsche did not write to create bitter nihilists who only criticize. He wrote to forge what he called free spirits, individuals capable of thinking beyond the herd, of creating their own values, of living with intensity. This knowledge is a sharp blade. You can use it to cut through your own chains and ascend, or you can use it to wound those who still sleep. Nietzsche warned, "He who fights with monsters should be careful lest he thereby become a monster." And if you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you. Do not use this knowledge to feel superior to those still imprisoned. Use it to free yourself, and perhaps, by example, to free others. In the comments below, tell me, which of these 5 laws of school programming has affected you most deeply?